Hey everybody, welcome back. This is video number 3 of our to-do list. And before we jump right into what we're going to do, I want to do a quick review of what it is we've already done so far, on the chance that perhaps you didn't see the previous videos plural. So in the first video, we talked about separation of concerns. We talked about component-driven development and declarative programming, the virtual DOM, etc. We walked through all of that. We talked about how the useState hook works, so you're going to want to go back to the first video to get a review of that. We used this simple counter example to demonstrate how state works, and then we talked through what happens when you use a state variable and how that makes a difference with your by using a state variable versus not using a state variable. So we talked about that. We identified the fact that whenever a state variable updates, it causes a re-render in the React application, and it basically goes through these steps. So, for example, with the set counter example, you see we have counter, we have set counter. You see that we're using state here, and we have a function called add1 that just takes that counter, adds 1 to it, and calls set counter to reset that value. And that's going to happen every single time a user clicks that button that we have identified here. So, for example, every single time the button gets clicked, set counter is passed the current value plus 1. React then compares the new value to the old value of the counter. Now, if those values are the same, React is going to do nothing, right? If those values are the same. If those values are different, React is going to update its virtual DOM based on a re-render of the component. So if the values, the previous value of counter and the new value of counter, right? If those are the same, React does nothing. But if those are different, right, then React is going to update the virtual DOM based on a re-render. It then is going to compare the virtual DOM to the real browser DOM, and it's only going to update the places in which they're different. So, for example, if I update the counter, this output here that says show the counter, that's going to need to get updated, so then it's going to change. And that is the main way that React deals with reactivity, by doing exactly that, by having those state variables. When you update them, we do the differential algorithm. We check and see, hey, is there something that's different now inside the real DOM as a result of what we change in the virtual DOM? And if it is, then we'll make that change. And it just does that process over and over and over and over again every single time you update a state variable. So state is really the linchpin of everything that we do inside of React, right? We also, in the second video, um, also took our working application that had full CRUD, able to be able to create to-dos, we're able to read to-dos, update to-dos, and delete to-dos. And then what we did here is we actually separated that functionality into different components. So we did that in part 2. And in part 3, what we're going to do is we're going to use CSS modules to properly style our application. So that's what we're going to do there, right? So we're going to use CSS modules in that way. So what I'm going to have us do is pick up exactly where we left off. So I'm going to open back up my application. It's been the same app that we had previously. As you can see, we have the to-do list component, and in the to-do list component, we have a form here, a little input field that essentially we use to create new to-dos, and then we have ourselves mapping over the to-do list and mapping over the completed to-do list, right? I'm also going to go ahead and run my application. So I'm going to start my backend by running npm run server, and I'm going to start my front end by running npm run client. And remember, we set that up ourselves inside the package.json. And as you can see, we have a fully working application. I can go ahead and create a new to-do. So I'll just say new to-do. I can create one. I can read it. As you can see, I can see the to-do here, and I can see the list of to-dos. I can update it, so I can change its completed property from being incomplete to being complete, right? And then I can also delete it. So that's full CRUD. Create, read, update, destroy. So again, create. There goes the to-do. Read it. I can see the to-dos on the page. Update. I can change data about the to-do. You see it moves down to completed to-dos because now the to-do is completed. And then of course also I can delete. That's the D, right? Create, read, update, and delete. Destroy. So that is what we currently have. And this is fine, this is working, but we want to add some CSS, right? Now, I'm not going to go into exhaustive detail about CSS in this video. I'm going to assume that you already know the basics of CSS. But what I do want to do is I actually want to cover, right, I actually want to cover CSS modules and SCSS, which is what we're going to use to style this. So CSS modules, which are going to give us some added superpowers to our regular CSS, are something that gets used pretty widely. A lot of people use it, and they're becoming popular more and more. They've been around for a good amount of time, but React definitely has helped further people utilizing CSS modules. It's not the only way that you can use to fix the problem that it's trying to solve, but it's one of the best ways that does exist for doing so. So what we're going to do inside of our application to use CSS modules, is we're simply just going to change the way we import our CSS, and that's going to allow us to use that modular format. And the benefit of it really is you're really going to have to see it in action to really, really grasp what I'm about to say. But what's going to happen is we're going to be able to make our CSS be more modular and more reusable, more maintainable by essentially having these local scopes for CSS and our different components. So if you recall, the promise that we initially made about component-driven development is that the CSS, the HTML, and the JavaScript are all together, right? Inside of one scope, separated from other components. And we haven't yet made that happen because right now our CSS is still global, right? What we're going to do is we're going to make our CSS only apply to an individual component at a time, and we're going to scope it so that even if you had two CSS style sheets with the same exact classes, they won't overlap with each other because of some magic working underneath the hood. So the way that you're going to end up utilizing a CSS module is you would go ahead and create one, just create a file, and then when you import it, you would import styles from that CSS file. And then what's going to happen is instead of calling this style class name, you're going to access it like it's a key on an object. So the styles will be an object, and each class name will be a key on that object. So styles.className, right, is going to contain the styles that you want to apply to that individual HTML element, right? And then in React, what we're going to do is we're going to actually name it by the name of the component, .module.css, and then apply it the same way. Class name is equal to styles.className. And we're going to even give it even extra superpowers. We're going to actually add in Sass and CSS inside of our CSS. So we're going to get our sassy CSS, SCSS, and we're going to make it so, and that's going to make it so that we can actually deal with our specificity in a better way as well. So for example, you can see this says .card and there's a little ampersand here. What that ampersand means is whatever the parent is, use that text and then add this additional text on the end. So for example, I could say, styles.card, card title, something along those lines, and then voila, that's going to work. The other piece is that when I nest one class inside of another, I get the automatic benefit of, let's say if I had a bunch of different card titles all over the page, this is going to create even a deeper scope inside my application, because this is going to say that I'm only going to apply this style to things that start with title only if and only if they are if it's inside of if it's a child of card, right? If it's inside of card, so that helps us out a lot there as well. So all of that, like I said, is super beneficial. We're gonna see it all in action, um, and once we use all this together, you're gonna see that you're gonna be able to be a lot more productive with your CSS. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open up our application. And I think this is one of those things where in order to get it, you got to see it. So to get ourselves ready to make this happen, the first thing that we're going to do is I am going to make a new folder inside of components. I'm actually going to make two. I'm going to make one called to do, and I'm going to make one called to do list. And this is going to be where I put all the files that have to do with the to-do component. And to-do list, I'm going to put all the files that have to do with the to-do list component. So that's what I'm going to be doing there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take to-do.js and put it inside of the to-do folder. Right? So put to-do.js in there, move it. It's going to ask me, do I want to update the imports? I'm going to say no because I want to do that manually. And I'm going to do that here as well. And the reason why I'm going to do it manually is I got trust issues. And so I don't trust the computer to always do it right, so I'd rather just do it myself. So I'm going to go to app.js and change the import. Since now that I changed the location of the file, I have to change the import. And now the file is located in, if you look from app.js, I've got to go over to the to-do list. I've got to go over to components, right? Then from components, go into to-do list. And then from to-do list, go to ToDoList.js, right? That's what I have to do. So I have to update this to like so. I don't have to put the .js on the end, only because it's going to assume that it's a JavaScript file, but you could put .js there if you want to. It's going to be able to figure that out because, like I said, at the end of the day, it knows, hey, I got, it sees ToDoList.js, so it knows that ToDoList.js is that to-do list.js is going to be a JavaScript file. Same thing here. I'm going to go to-do list.js and I'm going to change this one. This one I got to do a little bit more work because I have to actually go out of, because if you look at where to-do list.js is, I got to go out of to-do list, over to to-do, and then to to-do. So I do dot dot to say that I want to go out of the to-do list folder, go over to the to-do folder, and then go to the to-do.js file. And then I'll save that. Right? And once we do that, our application should still be running the exact same way. So if I come here and I test it out, right, it should still work exactly like it was working before. No changes. All right? So now that we've made that clear, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to add a new file called to do, right? And I'm going to call that to do .module .scss, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make a new file called to do list .module .scss, right? And what I want to do essentially with that file is I want to add styles to style this and just make it look better, right? Nothing particularly I have in mind, but just want to make it look better than what it looks like now. So I'll start by coming back over to my code, right? And I'll start by styling the to-dos. I'll start from the bottom, right, and go up. So I'll go to to-dos and then to-do list. And so in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import styles from to-do.module.scss. right? And in order for that SAS to work, we're going to need to also install npm SASS, right? We're going to need to do that as well, right, to get the SAS library in there. So inside of todo.js, oh, and keep in mind it's npm SASS, right? Just in case you didn't catch when I said it, npm SASS, right? That's what we want to go ahead and type in the terminal. Make sure you use a terminal that's not active, because if you type it in here, it's not going to do anything. You need to do it in an open terminal, so you'll need a third terminal to do that, right? And then what we're going to do then is we're going to be able to write our SCSS code. So I'll start by saying that I want to style, right? Let's say I'm going to style these divs, and I'm going to style the button, right? So what I'll do is into do.module.scss, I am going to make a class called, let's say container, right? Or actually, let's even just call it to do. Let's just call it to do. And that's going to be my main thing that I'm styling. And then from in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically say what I want it to look like, right? And essentially what I am going for inside the to do is I do want the font size to be a certain size. So we'll go ahead and we'll say make it a little bit bigger. So I'll say 1.5 rem, right? I will also say that I want the, let's say the color. Let's change up the color a little bit. And let's use like a dark bluish color. So let's say a little bit of red, a little bit of green, and a lot more blue, right? So that gives us like a dark navy kind of blue. And then I will add the opacity of 0.7, actually say 0.8. That will be the color. And then we could say that the button that we're going to have inside it to do, we'll say button, dot button. And let's say we want to do a text transform. Let's make everything capital, so uppercase it. What else do we want to do there? Let's go ahead and give it a cursor of a pointer, right? Let's give it a color for the text. So we'll say the color of the text is going to be ghost white, right? Let's give the button some padding. So let's say that let's say 0.25 rem on the top and bottom, and let's say 1 rem on the left and right. The font size, let's just make that 1 rem. And I guess we could also say do something with the font weight. So let's say that let's make the text bold. So we'll say 700 for bold text, right? We could also, let's say, display this inline block so it could have some dimensions. This way that we can give it a margin. And let's say let's say 0 on top. Actually, we only need to worry about the left side because the left is where the text is at. So we'll just say 1 rem from the left, and we'll add a little bit of border radius so it's a little bit so that there's a little bit of rounding of the corners. So we'll say 2 pixels on that, nothing serious. We also will say that the box shadow, just so it looks like a button, so it comes off the page a little bit. So we'll say 0 pixels, 2 pixels, 5 pixels to give it some shadow. And for RGBA, we'll use the exact same color we have for the text above, except for we'll make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, so we have our button. I feel good about that where it is right now. We'll go ahead and we'll tweak it some more. And so you see we have these 2 classes, to do and button. And so I'm going to go back over to to.js, and I'm going to add a class name here of styles dot to do to add the to do class here. And then on the button, I'm going to add a class name of styles dot button, and I'm going to save it. And then if we take that change that we made, we go to our browser, right? We've got now we've got these buttons now have some styling on it. The background color, I don't think I ever set the background color on the button. Let me fix that. I never set that. So let's go ahead and set the background color of the button. Let's go ahead and say background color, and we'll just go ahead and we'll say RGB A23558.0.8. I wanted to match the other. And if we go back now and take a look, there we go. We got these nice darker bluish purple buttons that we made. And bam, 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 we got some styling there. Right? You can also see the text has a little bit of styling on it too. Everything's looking a little bit better there now. So essentially, as far as I'm concerned, buttons are styled, right? I mean, the to-dos are styled. So let's move on now, and go to the to-do list, right? So we styled the buttons. So you see we have dot to do dot button, right? And then when we go to to-do.js, we use it like this, to do and button. And you see I was able to nest it here the same way it's nested in my application. The to do is here, and then the button, right, is a child of to do, right? And so I can nest it inside of to do, inside to do's opening and closing bracket without me having to add any additional text to the selector. So now let's go to do list. So I'm going to go to do list. I'm going to import the styles here as well. And I will say import. And let's say we're going to import styles from / to do list module SCSS. Right? And then in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some styles here. And so generally, all I really want to do with the to-do list is I just want to make it so that this whole entire to-do list, right, I can make the things inside of it just look decent. So what I'm going to do is, instead of that being a fragment, I'm going to change that to a div so I can actually style it together. Uh-oh. I have an issue with my keyboard. Yeah, my keyboard is acting up just a little bit. No big deal. Show must go on. Oh, come on. Huh. Okay. Are you working now? I think so. All right. So now that my keyboard is behaving, so now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add div there and div down here at the bottom. And now that we have done that, now we have a now we have something that we can style. So now I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go to to-do module.scss, right? ToDoList.module.scss, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a style here for dot to do list. And let's look at see what it is that we want to style. So you want to style this whole this group, right? And then we want to style this input, and then we want to style, and then we want to go ahead and style this, yeah, really just this div in and of itself. So what I'll do is I'm going to say that this to-do list is going to display itself flex. It's going to have flex direction of column. It's going to justify content to the center, and it's going to align items to the center, right? I'll save that, and then I'll go over to my to-do list, and I'm going to add the class name of styles dot to do list, all lowercase now. We'll save it. We'll take a look and see what that looks like now. So now this is nice and centered on the page. Looks good. Then I'm going to come back over to my code. And so we have that basic look. And then we're going to style the text in here. And so in the to-do list module.scss, we'll go ahead and we'll say that that the font size is going to be, let's say, 2 rem. The color is going to be, I don't know, let's just say, actually, let's use the same colors, RGBA, right? And what do we say? 23, 5, 58, and 0.8, I believe is what we said previously. So we'll get that same color, and then we'll take a look, right? And voila, it's looking a little bit better. And then we can go ahead and style that input, make it a little bit bigger. So what I'll do for the input, let's go ahead and style the input. And I'll just say that the inputs that are inside of the to-do list, and we'll say that let's say is there anything I want to do to this to make it look a little bit cleaner? We could give the text some color. as we're the text we're typing. So we give the text some color. We could also, let's say, display it inline block, right? So that has some dimensions, so that I can give it padding and margin and all that. So we could say that the let's say that the margin is going to be 1 rem all around, and let's give it no border, so it's nice and clean. But if we do that, we need to make sure that it has a good background color. So let's give it a background color. And we just want like a, basically like a really, really nice white. So we'll say RGB, and we'll say that we'll take 163. Let's say 163. Actually, let's give it a little bit of color. We'll leave those the same. Actually, give it a little bit more green. Actually, let's give it a little bit more. Let's see. I like that. Hmm. Yeah, I like that. Sorry, I think about it in my head for a second. I should probably cut that part out. But let's say 240. Um, that sounds good. I'm thinking about how much I want. 243. Let's say 245, and then maybe like 253, right? Or even like 254, right? That should be a good background. And let's save that. And then and then we'll go back over to do list, and on the input we'll go ahead and give it a style. So class name, and then we'll say styles dot input. And let's take a look. Yep, good, good. And then, so you see that looks a little bit better. Yep, that's a good color I picked there. And let's also go back and let's see if let's actually make the let's make the font size a little bit bigger. Font size 2.5 rem. And let's take a look. And now we just have a bigger field here. Nice. And then we say hello. We get 1. We complete it, we delete it, and now we got a nice little to-do thing going on here. And yeah, I like the way that looks. Only other thing that I'll do is now that we have those scope styles that we put here, we can also go ahead and in our main styles, remember the styles.css that's imported into index.js, that's still just regular CSS, and we could use that to style like our body, right? And that's what I would use that for, to style like the body or create CSS variables or something like that. And so if we wanted to make our body, let's say for example, have no margins, that's something that we might want to do. We can give it a height and say that the height is going to be 100% of the viewport height. We could set it to be, let's say, display flex, flex direction column, right? Justify content center and align items center. It's good for us to do because by doing that, it's like we're centering everything in there. And if we go ahead and take a look now, let's go and look in the browser. Now everything's nice and set up here, right? And what we could also do is we go back over to our code one more time, and then we'll kind of be done because then we kind of have proven our point on how these CSS modules are going to work. But we could actually even make it that the to-do list, we could add like a border radius on it, let's say for example, and give it like a border radius of 9 pixels, right? We could also give it a border, and we could say the border is 1 pixel solid, and let's say RGBA, and let's say it's 0.1, so it's a more, some more opacity there. We could also, let's say, that's good enough. We could do more stuff. So let your imagination run wild. Style it whatever way you want. But now you can see that I have like this little box here. Actually, let me give it some padding because that looks bad now. Let me give it some padding. Let's say padding, and let's say 2 rem of padding, right? And let's take a look. Yeah, the 2 rem of padding is good, and then that looks weird without any box shadow. So we'll give it just a little bit of box shadow, then I'll stop. Right? So give it a little bit of box shadow. We'll say 2 pixels, 4 pixels, 8 pixels, RGBA, same color, a little bit less though, save. And then if we take a look now, right? And now we've got our little to-do list thing here. So I feel good about the way that came out. And I'm going to share this code on GitHub. But essentially, we built our entire to-do list. Our to-do list is fully functioning. It's fully styled. It was styled using CSS and SCSS, and we use CSS modules in order to do that. We broke everything down into components to fit in with our component-driven development. And so we did a lot of concepts in here to put this together. This is a great little thing that you could show, to show that you know how React works and how to write good React code. And that's it. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop here. If there's any questions, feel free to email me at boss@bigpapacode.io. And also, of course, you could email me, text me. You can go to my website, bigpapacode.io. You can see this lesson, and you could also, book a time to speak with me, etc., etc. So It's been great. Be blessed, have success, and I will see you in the next videos in this MERN Stack Mastery series. After this, we're going to be transitioning into bookmarks. So we're going to apply a lot of these same principles in bookmarks, just so you can see how we apply it to a different problem. So take care, and I'll see you next time.